He wanted to see Krishna's illusory energy. Narayana appear.
That's what Markandeya Rishi did.
Hmm?
The illusory energy is what Markandeya Rishi.
Mm.
Yeah.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Giridharidhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Giridharidhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamunatiravanachari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamunatiravanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharidhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamunatiravanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharidhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharidhari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare 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 Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Shri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu ki Jai. Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. So let's do the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So welcome to chapter 25 of the Nectar of Devotion. For those of you that have been hearing from chapter 1 onwards, very, very proud of you. And if you haven't, you can catch up on the audios. This book, like Prabhupada said, is a law book for Vaishnavas, and it should be read a few times. So in our humble attempt, we will start studying and reciting chapter 25 today. So let's first offer our obeisances to the Six Gosvamis of Vrndavana. Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipuno Sadharma Samstapako Lokanam Hitakarino Tribhuvane Manyo Sharanyakado Radha Krishna Padhara Vinna Bhajana Nannena Mataliko Vande Rupa Sanatana Rago Yugo Shri Jiva Gopala Go. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the six Goswamis, namely Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all of the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus they are honored all over the three worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of, because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. Jai Sri Sat Goswami Prabhu's ki Jai. So, in chapter 25, first, the devotees of Krishna, it's entitled The Devotees of Krishna, a Stimulus for Ecstatic Love, Asraya. So, there are two in the previous chapter, the stimulus for ecstatic love we heard where, first of all, Krishna's qualities in the previous two chapters. Then in the now it has come to a point where the devotees of Krishna are the stimulus for developing or ecstatic love or awakening ecstatic love in the individual. Now, you may have heard that in many a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Krishna says that he dwells within the heart of his pure devotees. So, where can Krishna be found? He can be found within the heart of the pure devotees. So, Srila Prabhupada, he undoubtedly is the pure representative of Sri Krishna. And we find that by his noble and humble endeavor, we actually all, and for generations to come in the future, will receive so much of stimulus or awakening of love of Krishna just by reading Srila Prabhupada's books, by looking at his pictures, by hearing his sound vibration in the form of lectures, or in some way coming in contact with him. But Prabhupada, he was not just like a sort of hermit kind of sage. He was a visionary person, a person who had a mission at heart. And that mission was no different from the mission of the rest of the parampara, non different from the mission of Sri Krishna, non different from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. So Prabhupada's mission was to spread Krishna consciousness. One time they asked Srila Prabhupada, you're giving sannyas initiation to all these Westerners and they are falling down. And Prabhupada commented, he commented that he knew, and I'm paraphrasing, he knew that they were, ridden with faults. He said, but they, in the meantime, when I give them sannyas, they help me spread the mission. So Prabhupada's awarding of sannyas to his Western disciples was not to show that they are perfected beings or anything like that. He was simply empowering them to carry forth his message. And he did that with every single member of who follows his instruction. So Prabhupada, he empowered every follower to become the stimulus for ecstatic love, or Asraya, giving shelter for to the entire world for all times to come. You find that in the, if you open the Bhagavad Gita as it is, there'll be a list of books, or any one of Srila Prabhupada's books. So there's a whole list of books, and it's said that Prabhupada, these are all the books by Srila Prabhupada. However, some of the books are actually by his followers who were humble enough and understood the philosophy enough not to take credit for it, but to simply give it in the name of Srila Prabhupada. So are those writings pure and stimulus for ecstatic love? Yes. The answer I would give yes so confidently and so quickly is because I am one of those persons who, first of all, read a compilation of Prabhupada's teachings that was composed by his disciples. The book Chant and Be Happy was not personally written by Srila Prabhupada, but was composed by his disciples. But it's in the list of Prabhupada's books. It's an offering to Srila Prabhupada. And that book transformed my existence overnight. So there's definitely potency in the carrier of the message of Srila Prabhupada, no matter how flawed the person can be. So this Nectar of Devotion states there are actually two subdivisions of devotees who actually can awaken or stimulate ecstatic love for Krishna. One is the Sadhaka, or the practicing devotee, and the other is the Siddha, or the perfect devotee. So which devotee can help you in your Krishna consciousness? the practicing devotee or the perfected devotee, both of them. So Srila Prabhupada says in the Nectar of Devotion, as you can see here that's quoted, that I quoted, Srila Prabhupada says the devotee of Krishna can be classified in two groups: those who are cultivating devotional service in order to enter into the transcendental kingdom, and those who are already in perfectional stage of devotional service. So for those of you who did the Vaishnav etiquette course with us way back, you would remember that we commonly quote the example given by the acharyas of the mango. So a mango is very green and sour and sometimes bitter sour. However, if it remains connected to the tree and gets adequate sunlight and water, then what happens is, we all know and we have heard time and time again, the sour mango becomes bittersweet, and then it becomes sweet when it's fully ripened. So sadhaka is not yet perfected. A sadhaka still has uh, faults. So it is indeed very narrow minded for us to think that all devotees fit into one category. How often it is we hear devotees, people say, "Oh, so and so is a devotee. Why is he or she behaving like this or like that?" You can't be a devotee and behave like this or like that. However, a sadhaka devotee, a practicing devotee, may still have faults, is not yet perfected. So, because he is still within the shade of Krishna consciousness, within the sun of Krishna consciousness, he will become ripened and sweetened eventually. He stays on the path. Feel free to send any questions uh, at any time. So the sadhaka. So which devotee can stimulate love? Any devotee. Any devotee? So we just heard the answer. Srila Prabhupada says a person who has attained attraction for Krishna, who is not freed from the material impasse, but who has qualified himself to enter into the kingdom of God, is called a sadhaka. A sadhaka means one who is cultivating devotion in Krishna consciousness. Let's repeat that. A person who has attained attraction for Krishna and who is not freed from material impasse. So there's an attraction for Krishna, there's Shraddha, there's faith, there's Ashakti, there's the attraction for Krishna, but he has not become freed from the material impasse. So since a sadhaka is at the stage of bhava, he is qualified to periodically receive direct darshan of Krishna. However, since he has not yet attained prema, he is not quite out of the material impasse. An example of this is Bilvamangal Thakur, who began to manifest sattvika bhav in the process of attaining perfection. So, we know the story of Bilvamangal Thakur, and uh, we find that here Srila Rupa Goswami is quoting him as an example. So, because prema is that perfected stage, up until the stage of bhava, one has not yet become completely freed of material contamination or the material impasse, as Prabhupada explains. So, the Siddha, the perfected devotee. Uh, so, the devotees who stimulate love are in two categories, we've heard: the sadhaka, the practicing devotee, and the siddha, the perfected devotee. So even from siddha or from the perfected devotees, there's the Sadhana-Siddha, that's somebody who became perfect by following the process of sadhana bhakti. Then is the Nitya-siddha, who's eternally perfect. So you find that the Sadhana-Siddha has only become perfect because he's remained in the sun of Krishna consciousness, practiced the rules and regulations. And then you get, in the Sadhana-Siddha perfection, a category of devotees who they get Krpa-Siddha, they get perfect by mercy. How often it is that you may see within the Vaishnav community that someone may not be like such a stalwart devotee as you may expect of a devotee, but the person may leave their body in an extraordinary circumstance, with all arrows pointing that that person has attained perfection, he's left the world in a perfect way. There's devotees chanting around him, his consciousness is alert, he's, it's like sort of everyone will say that devotee definitely went back home, back to Godhead. So that is that may be Krpa-Siddha. You may recall the story of this devotee, Sudama. Um, he was a Prabhupada disciple, and he was very instrumental in opening up the center in Japan. So Sudama, on the instruction of Srila Prabhupada, went to Tokyo, and he opened up a center there. And Prabhupada was exceptionally pleased with him. However, the devotees, they couldn't relate much to Sudama because Sudama was gay. And Prabhupada gave him sannyas. Prabhupada sent him to go and preach abroad. And then, when Prabhupada left this world, or I think even before Prabhupada left this world, Sudama, his material desires got the better of him. So he left the movement and he went and he, engaged in all types of sinful activities that one wouldn't even want to mention. So Sudama, he actually contacted AIDS. And AIDS gives you a kind of definitive time, a period of how long you have to live. So Sudama then phoned the Hare Krishna temple, and a devotee answered the phone. And he introduced himself. He said he's Sudama, he was initiated by Srila Prabhupada, and by Krishna's Kripa, Krishna's unlimited Kripa. The person who answered the phone was a Mataji who was recommended for initiation by Sudama when Sudama was temple president in LA, or one of the American temples. And she was very grateful to him because she became a Prabhupada disciple because he recommended her for initiation. And she was so happy to hear from him. And the story was that he was now, nearing his end, and he needed some help to leave his body. So this Mataji, she invited him to come and stay in the, at the temple. However, the temple accommodation was not good enough, so she took him to her flat. And she had a 13 or 16-year-old daughter who really couldn't take the whole scenario of a person coming to our house to die. It was a pretty intense on this young girl. So the mother had to move Sudama back to the temple, and she stayed in the same room. She slept on the floor because Sudama became so incapacitated by the disease AIDS that he couldn't use the toilet. He needed to be in napkins, and he needed to be cared for like a little baby. And this Mataji's Kripa actually was so incredible that Sudama was able to remember Krishna, was able to remember Srila Prabhupada, because she kept reading to him from the Krishna book and Prabhupada Leelamrita, etc. That when Sudama was leaving his body, he was so frail. The disease had eaten away his material body to such an extent that he could not sit up anymore in bed. But at the time, just when he was about to breathe his last, Sudama sat up erect. He raised his hands up and he said, Jai Prabhupada. Prabhupada has come. And he left his body. So it's incredible. That's Krpa-Siddha. That's the Kripa of Prabhupada's representative who helped him to reawaken those joyful memories, etc. And of course, we have heard that once a devotee, always a devotee, you know, and the Bhagavad Gita has verses where Krishna explains that the devotee, declare it boldly, my devotee never perishes. So sometimes temporarily, Maya will take away the devotee, will cover the devotee to such an extent, and the devotee will become so, you know, will be a sadhaka practicing Krishna consciousness, and somehow fall prey to Maya. But if somehow or the other they get kripa from a devotee, they get mercy of the devotees, they will live in a glorious way. Personally, I can think of so many examples, as I'm sure most of you that are seasoned devotees and are aware of people leaving their body in the Vaishnav society, can think of numerous examples. I know an example here in South Africa of a Mataji who was just a housewife. She was never very learned in philosophy. She could not really converse much on Krishna Leela, etc. But she, you know, practiced her sadhana. She had faith in her spiritual mentors. And as a result, when she was leaving her body in Tongat in the presence of her Nitai Gaurahari deities, little brass deities, her spiritual master phoned the temple and told the temple president in Durban at that time, you must go to her house immediately with the kirtan party. At such and such time, she will leave her body. And sure enough, when Bhakti Chiru Maharaj made that phone call to Shruta Kirti Prabhu, then he left immediately. And sure enough, at that time, that Mataji left her body in perfect Krishna consciousness. She was fully absorbed in serving Krishna as an assistant to one of Krishna's associates. And the details were revealed, and it was incredible. Then, I know of another devotee who went to Vrindavan when she heard she had cancer, and she was preparing to leave her body, but she wasn't like a very philosophical person. She didn't even manage to read perhaps the entire Bhagavatam, etc. But she was very sincere, a very good servant of the devotees, very pure in the practices she had embraced in sadhana. And when she was about to leave her body, she was like the first person in ISKCON that had come to prepare to leave their body. So many senior disciples of Srila Prabhupada would gather at her bedside and read the various pastimes of Krishna and, Vidagdha Madhava, Lalita Madhava. All of these plays written by the Goswamis were being enacted sort of in her presence just before she left her body by very senior disciples of Srila Prabhupada. And she, by that kripa, perfected her existence so much so that she knew her Swarup Siddhi when she was leaving her body. So this Krpa-Siddha is very, very incredible. So we hear that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he says that we should be ready to offer all respects to others. So, what does this mean to offer all respects to others? It means to understand that every other person has an attraction to Krishna that we may lack in. Whether it's 1%, half a percent, a minute percent, we should always consider that the other person, everybody else, has something more to offer to Krishna, and thus remain in the atmosphere of Trinada Pisaneshana. Because at the time of death, we never know who will be there to help us exit this material plane in the proper manner. His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami would always say, you never know if the person you hate the most will be the only person at your bedside when you're at the time to exit this material world. So it's very, very important to always keep that in our consciousness. So what does it mean, Sadhana-Siddha, perfect by practice? Srila Rupa Goswami gives two examples of the devotees who have achieved perfection by practice. It's being quoted from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 15th chapter, 25th verse. A devotee who achieves perfection by regularly executing devotional service is a person who is freed from false egotism, is freed of material existence, and is or an advanced mystic. So is free from false egotism, of material existence, or of being an advanced mystic, and thus is eligible to enter into the kingdom of God known as Vaikuntha. So in order to enter into the spiritual realm, this material conception of life that is governed by false ego has to be nullified. The example of Markandeya Rishi, learned sages like Markandeya Rishi attained perfection in devotional service by executing such regulative principles of service. So Markandeya Rishi is mentioned in our scriptures as that yogi. He was performing yogic siddhis for a long period of time, and he got the direct darshan of Naranarayan, Krishna in the form of Naranarayan, and he later on attained perfection. So it is explained that such a mystic becomes so joyful by constant execution of regular principles of devotional service that he thereby achieves the special favor of the Supreme Lord. Yamaraj, the mighty superintendent of death, is afraid to go near such a devotee. So we can imagine the potency of an advanced of one who is advanced in devotional service, especially when devotees sit together and engage in talking of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So what happens when a mystic yogi achieves special favor, Kripa, of the Supreme Lord? Then he becomes the person that even Yamaraj will become scared of approaching. Those devotees express their feelings in such a way that they automatically melt with ecstasy, and many transcendental symptoms become manifested in their bodies. Anyone desiring advancement in devotional service must follow in the footsteps of such devotees. So anyone who is experiencing this will naturally give up the tendency for material existence, will, because of developing a higher taste, as Prabhupada put it, would give up all of the lower tastes, will not be interested in mundane activities. Such a person is a Sadhana-Siddha. If one practices sadhana properly, there is no doubt that one will not have a tendency for material existence. That means one won't want to engage in any sense gratificatory activities. When one makes a loophole in one's sadhana practice, Prabhupada gave the example one time when he was traveling on the train and with these Western disciples. So if any one of you, many of you have been on the trains in India, you know that in the coach, you sit on it's like a long bus seat, right? And you sit there, and the next person pushes in and sits right next to you, and it's quite tightly packed. So in Prabhupada's compartment, a young child entered and came and saw a small place in between two devotees, and sort of niggled his way in and sat there. So then Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he felt a little bit in the mood of wanting to give the person a seat, a better sitting place. So he moved onto the floor. And then next thing, the person's family member came in and sat next to the child. And then Prabhupada started to laugh. And then Prabhupada was saying, Maya is like this. If you have a small loophole, she sort of niggles her way in and takes firm ground there. and it's very difficult to get her out. So sadhana practice, when there is actually a tendency to sort of not be steadfast enough to follow as rigidly as Prabhupada has taught us, then what happens is that Maya gets in, and slowly, before you know it, your aeroplane is flying down at high speed. So it's very important that as sadhana-siddhas, we have to be vigilant, um, to be aware that we are actually slackening. Therefore, Prabhupada and the Acharyas have time and time recommended that the practice of devotional service in the association of advanced devotees is so important, because this will be, and what do we do when we meet other devotees, or we accept that somebody is more advanced than us? Then in all humility we ask the person, please correct us in any way. If you see me doing anything wrong, or if you see anything that is beneficial for my spiritual growth, please do not hesitate to let me know. So that's how we associate with devotees. That is one way. So the other type of devotee is known as the Krpa-Siddha. A Krpa-Siddha is perfect by mercy. So Srila Rupa Goswami gives two examples of devotees who have achieved perfection by the Lord's causeless mercy, Krpa-Siddha. The first example he quotes is the Dvija Patnis, the wives of the Yagnik Brahmanas. When the wives of the Brahmanas were favored by Lord Krishna and immediately attained the ecstatic love of Godhead, their husbands said, quote, "How wonderful it is that although these women have undertaken no reformatory performances such as accepting the sacred thread, have not resided in the monasteries of the spiritual master, have not observed the strict principles of celibacy, have not undergone any austerities, and have not philosophized upon the observance of ritualistic ceremonies. They have still attained the favor of Krishna, which is aspired after even by great mystics. How wonderful is it that these women have attained such perfection, while we, although Brahmanas, who have performed all the reformatory activities, cannot attain to this advanced stage." So who are these wives of the Brahmanas that is being spoken of here? You remember the time when Krishna had when Krishna and Balaram were hungry. The wives of the Brahmanas, they did not hesitate to send their offerings to Krishna and Balaram, and thereby they got the kripa of directly serving Krishna. The Brahmanas, they had to go take bath, and they had to chant their gayatris and do so much rituals. But the spontaneous service attitude of the Dvija Patnis allowed them to attain to such an advanced stage. So that is Krpa-Siddha. So Krpa-Siddha, perfect by mercy, is the second example that Srila Rupa Goswami quotes is that of Sukadev Goswami. So who's Sukadev Goswami? Sukadev Goswami is none other than that person who recites the Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj. So Narad praises him thus: "My dear Sukadev Goswami, you never took the trouble to reside under the care of a spiritual master, yet you have attained a great status of transcendental knowledge. You never took the trouble to undergo severe austerities, and still how wonderful it is that you have been situated in the most perfect stage of love of Godhead." So the story of Sukadev Goswami is that he remained 16 years within the womb of his mother when his father Srila Vyasadeva was speaking the Bhagavatam to the mother. He, as the unborn child, heard all of this, and thus he became perfected. So when he came out after 16 years, and he wandered off away from the house, then Vyasadeva had to attract him back simply by sending disciples who recited a few choice verses of the Bhagavatam. And Sukadev Goswami was so impressed when he recognized these verses. He said, who has taught you this? And thus only, it was then only that Vyasadeva was able to get Sukadev to come briefly to the ashram. But he attained the perfection because he spoke the Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj in 7 days before the king's death. Then you get a Nitya-siddha. So who is a Nitya-siddha? A Nitya-siddha is eternally perfect. Like, when we say the Prema Dwani prayers at the end of our worship in the temple, Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa, you'll hear Nitya Leela Pravista Om Shri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki being said sometimes. So this Nitya-siddha is an eternally perfect person who descends into this material strata with a mission and a specific purpose. So in the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada writes, devotees who are never separated from Krishna are called Nitya-siddha, eternally perfect. Nitya-siddhas are on the same platform as Sri Krishna, since they, like he, are never touched by Maya. Persons who have achieved eternal blissful life exactly on the level of Sri Krishna and were able to attract Lord Krishna by the transcendental loving service are called eternally perfect. In the Padma Purana, the Lord tells Satyabhama, "My dear wife, you should not consider that my associates are ever separated from me." This is confirmed in a later reference from the same Purana, where the Supreme Lord returns to his eternal abode, his associates return with him to their respective places. As such, these ever liberated Vaishnavas are never bound by material laws of birth and death. Quoting the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada points out that the birth, deeds, and activities of Nitya-siddha devotees are as transcendental as the Lord's. So Nitya-siddha, one time they asked Srila Prabhupada, when did he start to practice Krishna consciousness? And Prabhupada said, there was never a time when I was not Krishna conscious. So his entire life, Prabhupada was Krishna conscious. Why? Because he descended from the spiritual strata in Krishna conscious association of Krishna. How can one not be Krishna conscious? So then it is, when the Lord tells Satyabhama, don't consider that my associates are ever separated from me. Even though they come to the material realm and they execute different activities, like Prabhupada had to be a householder, Prabhupada had to be a businessman, but Prabhupada was never separated from Krishna. He always maintained that link with Krishna. His consciousness was always completely immersed in Krishna consciousness. We know that when Prabhupada was young, his father would come and he would do the arati, and Prabhupada would watch all of that. And then when Prabhupada and Pishima, his sister, would go out to fly their kites, then what would they do? Pishima would pray, Govinda, Govinda, please help make my kite fly higher than her brothers. And sure enough, because she would pray like that, her kite would fly higher than Prabhupada's. But Prabhupada and Pishima were always playing like this. And we could see that this is actually an extraordinary type of consciousness. Nitya-siddha, eternally perfect. So eternal individuality of Nitya-siddhas, just as the post of God is eternally filled by Krishna, the various Nitya-siddhas are also eternally situated in their respective posts. Thus, as it is an offense to consider oneself Krishna, so it is offensive to consider oneself to be Yasoda, Nanda, or any other associate of the Lord. Very, very clear. that one cannot artificially, it's actually a sahaja mentality, a mentality of a pretender, to now identify oneself as maybe Radharani, Krishna, Yasoda, Nanda, or any one of Krishna's eternal associates. We know that our acharyas have taught us to always try to develop the mentality of being the servant of the das anudas 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 anudas, the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant. There's no vacancy for these positions. These positions are eternally taken. Sometimes when I used to go door to door preaching, I would meet followers of Mirabai, and they would have some of them, I don't know how they got this into their head, but they were in the mood of taking the position of Srimati Radharani, and that, as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we know, is completely not our line of understanding. So the Nitya-siddha possesses 55 qualities of Krishna. As previously described, Krishna possesses 64 qualities, and a pure devotee can possess the first 50 in minute quantity. The Nitya-siddhas, however, possess 55 qualities. All of the ever-liberated souls who accompany the Lord have the first 55 qualities without any doubt. So, the 55 qualities of the Lord are special qualities, and for a person to have them means that the person has descended from perfection already. So that's a very, very incredible thing. It's a very deep thing that we have had the in our lineage so many Nitya-siddhas descending to help us elevate our consciousness, like Srila Rupa Goswami. He is Rupa Manjari, and Rupa Manjari possesses, the 55 qualities for the pleasure of Krishna by her purity in wanting to become the servant of the servant of the servant of Srimati Radharani in perfect Radha Dasya Bhav. So that brings us to the conclusion of today's class. Um, does anyone have any questions? Hmm. Is a Nitya Siddha a devotee? Yes. Sorry. Is Prabhupada a Nitya Siddha devotee? Yes, Prabhupada is a Nitya Siddha devotee, as I was explaining. Um, who is a Nitya Siddha? A Nitya Siddha is a person who has never forgotten Krishna his entire life, and has especially empowered to spread this mission of Krishna consciousness in that way. So definitely Prabhupada is a Nitya-siddha, as we've explained in the class. Do you have any comment on that? So Nishingananda Prabhu is explaining that Prabhupada is the Senapati Bhakta. So Lord Chaitanya, he predicted that his chief in commander will come and spread this mission of Krishna consciousness. So who in the Western world, all over the world, so who did that? Srila Prabhupada. He was the first person to succeed, in converting the Westerners into Vaishnav practice. Then there's another story of how, when Krishna was ascending, he was departing the earth planet after performing his Leela for 125 years here. Then Krishna was about to leave the planet. Then the river, the personality Mother Ganga, appeared in front of Krishna and was crying and begging and in a very humble mood, asking Krishna, now that you are leaving, how will my waters become purified? Because all sinful people come and they take bath to deposit their sin in the river Ganga. So she was concerned, how will that now, will she just be overburdened and overburdened by the sin of all of the sinful people of Kali Yuga. Like Prabhupada made the statement, so many thousand prostitutes come daily and take bath in the Ganga, right? And then they go off and then they do the same prostitute business. So that is now sinful on the strength of the holy waters of Ganga to come bathe and go and perform sin again. That's not recommended at all. So at that time, Krishna told Mother Ganga that don't fear, my mantra upasana devotee will come. And the description that Krishna gives of the mantra upasana devotee, that devotee who chants the Maha Mantra and who distributes it all over the world, when those devotees, that devotee's followers come and they bathe in the Ganges water, then they will act as transparent via medium through which sin will then be absorbed by Krishna. So that's a very incredible thing, that a Nitya-siddha can perform such an incredible service to Lord Krishna and to Mother Ganga. So if there's no further comments or questions in the YouTube, there's nothing. All right. So then we'll conclude class there for today. This was a short chapter about the different types of devotees, and so much could be said about Prabhupada. Like one time, Prabhupada was walking with a group of his disciples, and at a certain time, he he picked up his cane. You all know that Prabhupada walked mostly with the cane. So he picked up his cane, and he sort of waved it in the air in sort of a circular motion, and he said, you all have come to discourage, I have come to encourage. So when we encounter devotees not behaving properly or not as pure and perfect as we have a picture of them in our head, then we must understand that despite their shortcomings, Prabhupada is using them to spread the mission. So, and that mercy, that kripa of following a unique acharya is a very, very unique situation where everything else falls away. All other criteria, no matter how many faults the person has, etc. If the person is engaged in the Sankirtan mission of Srila Prabhupada, many things can actually be nullified because of Prabhupada being pleased by them following his instruction in spreading the mission or distributing his books, etc. So on that note, we shall end class. I wish you the very best since it's the first class for this year, 2020. We wish you a happy 2020, and we look forward to more Sangha and association with you all. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.